Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is indeed a pleasure to be with you this evening. Once I loved a bonny lass, I love her still. And whilst that virtue warms my breast, I'll love my handsome Nell. As bonny lasses I have seen, and money full to draw, but for a modest graceful mind, the like I never saw. And so goes the opening lines of the first written poem and song of Robert Burns. A teenage boy, passionate, a soul enchanted, a heart at rest, struck by the dart of love, for graceful individual named Nellie Kilpatrick. And so we are immediately and empathetically drawn to the author. We relate to him. For there too were we, once, smitten teenagers, longing for him or for her to simply recognize us, to fashion moving words that would inspire so that our love might not go unrequited, but it often did. There in the seat that I have vacated is he, and I am him. Here in this room, in this house, is he. We in all our imperfections are him. He in all of his is us. It is not Robert Burns that is immortal, but the values he kindled and rekindled, the flames that warmed a callous society. And for those who listen, he will continue to thaw the hearts and chill of hearts that exist in our world with words. Words, indeed, can and should be beautiful, powerful, unifying, uplifting, nourishing, but unfortunately, they can be hateful, divisive, cruel. From whence do they spring? It is indeed the soul that stirs their creation. And this ploughman's poet, this Scottish songwriter, this lovable lad, Robert, stirred a delicious Scotch broth with his soul. He mixed in the ingredients of love, of humor, of joy, of anguish, his own guilt, the judgment of others, fear, compassion, egalitarianism, and benevolence. And oh, did he stir the pot over an open fire. It was rich and robust and flavorful. And we can put what he served to our lips and savor the taste. On January 15th, 1759, the British Museum opened to the public at the Montague House, which was a late 17th century grand mansion in Great Russell Street in the Bloomsbury district of London. It was indeed a resplendent structure. It was an event of great fanfare, of brilliant and inspirational exhibits. The elite and many more classes in London society were thrilled by the spectacle. But nowhere to be seen at the opening were the many families who lived in abject poverty, those who could not afford daily bread, who were living in workhouses. In fact, the economically poor, and especially children, were elusive in the historical records of the period, essentially invisible and unheard in the data and secondary administration administrative literature of the period. And in Scotland, where the Scottish Parliament voted to adopt the Treaty of Union with England in 1707, poverty was a real issue, growing more acute by the year. Only about a week after the British Museum in London in 1759 opened, a winter chill enveloped Ayrshire on the southwest coast of Scotland. It was wet, it was muddy. The days were beginning to lengthen, but still short. The sun, though often behind the gray clouds, rose at 8:30 and was down at 4:30. And there, in a simple, cold, thatched cottage with dirt floors in the village of Alloway, with no fanfare, no bands of pipers marching, was born into poverty to tenant farmers William and Agnes Burness. Their first child would be named Robert. As we celebrate this moment, and is often the case with historical figures whose birthdays we honor, we often overlook a vital person, and that is the mother. Sometimes historians are too quickly moving towards, and unusually will gravitate to, the story of the father. Not tonight. Not tonight. I wish to say this about Robert Burns's mother, Agnes. She was a saint. She was a nurturer, and in this sense, she nurtured in her son a love of song, of words, of goodness. And I honor her especially on this day that she gave birth. And just as I honor Agnes, I wish to honor another woman who is often forgotten, a hero central to this story. Her name, Jean Armour. She, the wife and partner of Robert Burns. She raised their 9 children, and even some not her own. Of her and their first meeting, Robert Burns wrote this: "There was a lass, and she was fair, at kirk or market to be seen. When all our fairest maids were met, that fairest maid was Bonnie Jean." She inspired poetry. She inspired children. She was eminently patient. She bore grief and loss with grace. She was forgiving. She helped Robert face his demons, and there were many. As Tam O'Shanter faced his, she carried him over many a bridge as he ran from the darkness that chased him. Without the world and her in it, we would not have his verse. Unfortunately, there are places that recognize her. In fact, there is a beautiful statue in Dumfries in Scotland. And like Agnes, I toast Bonnie Jean. Robert Burns had an aptitude for song and romanticism and satire and pastoral pleasures. And his words immediately resonated with the people. They were fresh, they were bold, capturing the voice of people from all stations and nations, especially those often overlooked and forgotten, and in a language and dialect of the Scottish people and the Scottish nation. A prince can make a belted knight, marquis, duke, and a that, but an honest man's upon his might. Guide faith, humana, a that. But a that and a that, their dignities and a that. The pith of sense and pride of worth, a higher rank than a that. what is this day around which we gather? What do we celebrate? Yes, on the surface, we celebrate a great author, a great poet, a songwriter, the pride of Scotland. But there is something deeper down in the soil that this plowing pen of Burns takes us to. Something deeper below this weakening shell of ours, this humble body of flesh and bone. 'Tis the seed of humanity. He is not the architect of the seed. He is the cultivator of it. I believe most of all, Burns helps us to celebrate life, embrace the hard edges of it, and do it with humor and satire. The special journey that we have to be human, to uphold the dignity of the human soul. And Burns helped us to remember all, to treat others with esteem, including ourselves, to stand by the innocent, to call out folly and hypocrisy in leadership, to hold the bully accountable, to remember those we love, to extend a helping hand to those in need. And on this day, literally today, there has been a wee girl or boy born into deep poverty in a small mud or stone hut or a tent with little to eat. But she has something remarkable. She has her soul. And maybe, just maybe, her mother is a refugee or an immigrant fighting for a new life. I think all of us can agree, let's help her voice rise, to help her voice be the lark that Robert Burns spoke of. Let's believe she can. For this wee boy from Alloway did so. His soul and voice was a gift, and that gift gives hope to that which is immortal, our personal freedom, our liberty, our capacity for love, our agency to choose what we do with our own souls and the souls we encounter. It is 260 years since Robert Burns' birth. Perhaps 260 years from now, the world will toast that girl who was born today. Celebrate what she stood for. And in so doing, they will toast the aspirations of Robert Burns. And in that sense, the Scottish bard will be right there, so pleasingly gathered with others for the toast. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses. I don't have glasses.
Mr. Robbie Burns. As long as you're ready.
To Robert Burns, to the goodness of the human soul, to life, to kindness, to the hope. Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. To life, to kindness, to the hope of peaceful days.
Robert Burns.